It was 3:17 a.m. when I was startled awake by the vibration against my thigh. Molly. I pulled my phone out from under the blankets to find my wife of 10 years cuddled up next to me, apparently fast sleeping. It wasn't mine. She must have rolled onto it, because the notification shone on the screen. "I can't wait to see you tomorrow, sweetie. I miss you terribly, Zoko." It wasn't a message from her mother, sister, or any of her friends, but rather the casual closeness that enticed my heart and chilled my bones. My initial reaction was to wake her up and confront her immediately, but something stopped me. A chilly serenity descended upon me. The baby's kisses were an illicit whisper in the dark intended for someone else. I put her phone back on the nightstand and pretended to sleep while my heart pounded against my ribs because I needed to know more. Without thinking, I texted a response to ask what time I should expect you tomorrow. After what seemed like an eternity, her phone vibrated once more in a matter of seconds. Beside me, I sensed her stirring as she scrambled for the phone. The display bringing light to her face in the early morning, somber through narrowed eyes. I observed her reading the message. The phone clattered onto the hardwood floor as her eyes widened and her breath caught. Her eyes darted to me as she bounded to her feet. She fumbled, scarcely able to speak, and I sat up, pretending to be sleepy. "What's wrong?" She didn't say anything too quickly. It was simply a horrible dream. The proof hit me like a physical blow to my suspicions that had been boiling beneath the surface for months as she scurried out of bed, grabbed her phone, and hurried into the bathroom, locking the door behind her. The quiet phone conversations, late work nights, and evasive justifications were all real. Molly was unfaithful to me. When the bathroom door finally clicked open, she came out pale and trembling, her eyes red-rimmed, and she didn't meet my gaze. "We need to talk," she said, her voice choked with emotion. I lay there staring at the ceiling, the world as I knew it rumbling around me. We had built life together, a home, a future, and now it was all tainted, poisoned by her betrayal. She tried to speak, but nothing came out of the quiet that was thick with implicit accusations and broken trust. "I think we do," I said in a chillingly calm voice. "Who is he?" she murmured. "David is a co-worker of mine." Over the course of the following torturous hour, everything fell into place. David, the new project manager, was a charming and charismatic person who usually seemed to be hanging around Molly a bit too much at company gatherings. Leaked out. The stolen looks. Every phrase that was twisted kept her crying, pleading for forgiveness, and swearing that it meant nothing but her pleas was met with silence at the late-night dinners that were passed off as work meetings and the secret weekend excursions. The damage was done. I told her to leave, pack her things, and go. She went that morning like a ghost escaping the scene of her crime, and I was left alone in the ruins of our marriage. I didn't yell or scream because the anger building inside of me was too great for that. The quiet of the empty house was making me feel even more hollow. But underneath the calmness was a plot to make them pay. My first tactic was to report David's inappropriate relationship with a married co-worker anonymously to our company's HR department. It was clearly against corporate policy for employees, especially those in different departments, to socialize with one another. Then I went straight to the heart of the matter, knowing that David was married to his wife Emily, a stay-at-home mother who was totally unaware of her husband's adultery. I located Emily on social media and sent her an anonymous message attaching screenshots of the text messages between Molly and David. The consequences were severe and swift. My seemingly perfect life, which was based on lies and deceit, fell apart when David was fired within a week. His wife was devastated, and furious threw him out of their home. However, I wanted a confrontation, a chance to look David in the eye and see the fear, shame, and fear reflected back at me. I found him at a nearby bar, where he was sitting by himself at the counter, sipping a drink, the epitome of sorrow. With my heart racing with a mix of rage and contentment, I approached him. David looked up, his eyes widening with recognition, his hand shaking as he grabbed for his drink, and I spoke in a low, scary voice. Paolo was enjoying your drink when he stammered and his speech was hardly audible. I asked in a sarcastic voice, and he didn't respond. Instead, he just stared at me with eyes full of guilt and fear. You know, I kept leaning closer, and I guess I was mistaken. I'm sorry, he muttered, avoiding my eyes. Sorry doesn't cut it, David. You destroyed my marriage. You ruined my life. I scoffed. Rose drawing the other customer's attention, David recoiled in his chair, his face flushed with guilt. You took something that wasn't yours, I snarled, in a venomous voice. And now you've lost everything. I turned and left him to suffer in alone. The months that followed were challenging. The anguish of betrayal stayed in my chest like a persistent ache, and reconstructing my life was a protracted and laborious process. The sensation of satisfaction was intoxicating. I had regained control and made them pay. I started going to therapy, concentrating on my career and getting back in touch with old friends. It wasn't easy, but I was resolved to move on. One day, several months later, I got a message from Molly, who apologized once more and said she had hit rock bottom, losing her job, her husband, her home, and she was starting over trying to rebuild her life. I didn't respond because I wasn't sure what to say. Part of me still felt angry and resentful, but another, smaller, more sympathetic part felt a pang of sadness for her. I erased the message, permanently ending that chapter of my life. The wounds would always serve as a reminder of the suffering and betrayal I had gone through. But I had made it through, and I was stronger and more resilient than ever. As I looked to the future, I was certain that I would never again allow myself to be a victim.